welcome to Hexed Encountered. My name's Joe. In this video, we're going to be doing a bit of gameplay from Old School Tactical. This is Volume 1, 2nd edition, the Red Blitz expansion, which is one of the Pocket Battles expansions in the series. This one, obviously, for Volume 1. And so we're going to be looking at some action from Operation Bagration. And this is part of the Tanktoberfest series here on Hexed Encountered, where we kind of feature things that revolve around tanks, or in which tanks play a fairly significant role. Okay, so here we have scenario number 5, which is called The Trains Must Run. This is July 2nd, 1944, outside of Minsk. And it basically says, as enemy forces closed in on Minsk, it was imperative for the Germans to keep the rail lines open, not only for supplies, but more importantly to evacuate the wounded. Arriving to help was the 5th Panzer Division and its subordinate 505th Heavy Panzer Battalion. A series of titanic clashes unfold north of the city between the desperate defenders and the onrushing mass of Soviet might. This is one of them. So what we have here is maps 4 and 5. There are 4 maps included in this. Maps 4, 5, 6, and 7. And these are pocket maps again. This is going to be a 13-turn scenario. As I said, we're using maps 5 and 4. These are double-sided maps. I did do a first look at this game along with the base game. On the other side of these is a winter map. They're identical, it's just one is more white, and this one is obviously green. So this covers 3 of the 4 seasons of the year, and the other one is for winter. So our off-board assets. The Germans are going to receive 1 rocket strike on turn 10. This is a game that counts down, so we start on turn 13 and count down to 1. There's also a mechanism for a turn 0 where you roll some dice, and that will determine whether or not there's an extra turn. But this is a 13-turn scenario. The Germans will get a rocket strike on turn 10. The Russians receive an airstrike on turn 10 and an artillery strike on turn 7. Special rules, half hexes are not in play. The German player sets up first. I've actually set everything up. You can kind of see these are the Germans here. This is the rail line that they are defending. Now it's really a road, but in this scenario we're treating it as a rail line. So I put my German forces out here in a way to hopefully defend. They do get reinforcements that will come in. At start, Soviet forces are over here. They're going to come in from the west. This is north is up. So west is this side, east is this side. And as I said, this is our rail line. So it does say all paved road hexes on board 4, except N6 and 7, that's these 2 guys right here, they're buildings, are railways and may be destroyed or occupied by Russian units. Railway hexes cost 1 movement point for all units to move into, and due to embankments, add +1 defense to terrain of the hex. So as you can see, I don't have anybody in there yet, but I can always move somebody into one of those hexes and use the embankments to gain a +1 to the defense. The Russians can destroy a railway hex in 2 ways. A satchel can be thrown into the hex, and the attack roll is made on the 7+ column of the ICT, that is the infantry combat table. And we'll see that in a little bit. An X result destroys rail. A good order sapper occupying the railway hex attacks it on 0 column of the ICT as a firing action. And again, an X result destroys the rail. When a rail hex is destroyed, we're going to put a rubble counter on it. But we will not be using the rubble defense modifier, because rubble typically, I believe, gives you like a +3 defense modifier. Attack roll modifiers are applied normally. So for victory, the Russians must occupy any 5 rail hexes at game end with good order non-leader units. There is an immediate Russian victory if 3 contiguous rail hexes are destroyed. So if they manage to destroy 3 hexes that are next to each other in 1 row, they win automatically. The Germans will win if they deny a Russian victory. So our German forces from the 5th Panzer Division, we start with 4 rifle squads, 1 heavy machine gun, 1 Flak 36, which is technically hidden. It's right here. Since I'm playing solo, the hidden doesn't really apply all that much. That is an 88mm anti-aircraft gun, if you're unfamiliar with what a Flak 36 is. 2 sergeants, one here, Sergeant Lindau, and one down here, Sergeant Kittle. And then we also have a light machine gun, which I set up here with Kittle and a squad. 2 Panzerfausts, which are here and here. One thing about Panzerfausts, they need to be outside. So we have a building here, and I could have set up in the building. But if you fire a Panzerfaust or a bazooka or a Panzerschreck inside a building, you have to take a gut check, which is basically a morale check. And I'd rather avoid that because we'll be taking them anyway from the enemy fire, right? It's true for both sides. So yes, you can do that, but that to me seems more like an extremist kind of situation. You don't want to just do that because you choose to. We also have a Martyr 2, which is down here. We have 2 mines and 1 trench. The trench is here. The mines are hidden, but so the way I'm handling that is basically I'm going to say that they're in this row right here, which is not G, I'm sorry, 11, or column 11, I guess, if you go rows and columns. So we're in 11, so basically this is 10, so it would be this one here. So it's basically like this. And as the Russians approach, what I'll do is I'll roll a die. Since we only have 2 mines, I'll figure that out, but basically I'm going to, instead of saying, well, I'm choosing where these are, since I'm playing both sides, I would know how to avoid the mines if I'm playing as the Russians, since I know as the Germans where I put them. So I'm going to use a die roll to kind of determine that, and I'll work it out in my head what the proper mechanism for that should be. So they do have 2 mines, as I mentioned. They set up anywhere on board 4, which is this guy right here. You got your 4 in the corner, tells you which board it is. For reinforcements, they're going to get 3 additional rifles, which I have set out on the side here. So these will be my first batch of reinforcements that arrive on turn 10 along the east edge of, it says board 5. I'm assuming it means board 4 because the east edge of board 5 is here, and they would just like pop into existence. That makes no sense. So they're going to appear over here. 3 rifles, Captain Lova, and 2 machine guns and a Panzerfaust. Then on turn 9, we're going to get some elements of the 505th Heavy Panzer Battalion, 3 Panzer Kampfwagen 6s, which are better known as Tigers. It's these guys right here. And Lieutenant Kruger, who is an armor leader. On the Germans' gut check number is 7. Their starting impulse points are based on a 2d6 roll. We add 2. They will get an additional impulse die for each of the 2 waves of reinforcements, so ultimately they'll roll 4. If you're unfamiliar with how this game works, once you take a certain number of casualty points, your impulse goes down by 1, so at every 5. So if you take 5 casualty points, it'll go down by 1. If you take 10, it goes down by 2, etc., etc. Now the main board, which is a mounted board and is beautiful, there's 2 of them in the game, they have trackers around them. We don't have that on the Pocket, so I'm going to have to kind of keep track of that. I thought about putting the board underneath and using the trackers on the board, but ultimately I just decided to put them out. So these don't lay perfectly flat. This guy's bowing out a little bit because they are paper. And I opted not to put plexi on it because the glare was significant. On the Soviet side, the 3rd Mechanized Corps, 5 sappers, 1 lieutenant, he's right here, Lieutenant Chekhov, 4 satchels, 5 IS-2 tanks. They're on the bottom because we're riding on them. Because it does say may set up loaded. So they set up on any full hex on the west edge of board 5, which is this guy right here. May set up loaded. Okay, on turn 11, we're going to get 4 rifle squads, 4 trucks, 2 sergeants, 2 light machine guns, and a satchel. That's this lineup right here. Some of it you can't see. The machine guns are off shot, but they're right beside these sergeants here. And then on turn 7, 4 shock squads and 4 Su-85s that will enter via hex. Well, the first wave will come in on the west edge. The second wave will come in via hex A7 and or S6 on board 5. So either the top or the bottom, basically kind of in the middle. And they can enter loaded. Well, both do enter loaded. This one you may set them up loaded. The other one you have to set them up loaded. And we'll go over what the terrain is and all that stuff here. This is really just set up right now. Soviets' gut check number is a 7. And they're going to have impulse points will be based on a 2d6 roll plus 4. They actually also gain an impulse die for each wave of reinforcements. Therefore, they will ultimately have 4, just like the Germans do. Basically, the impulse points, you use your impulse points to do actions, and the more impulse points you have, the more actions you can do. And as you build up a number of units, you need more impulse points. It's kind of, that's a very logical progression. So initially you have potentially on the German side, your highest potential impulse is 14. If you count up your starting units, you have 4 rifles. Your flak 36, that's 5. Your mortar is 6. So 6 times 2 would be 12. You can do 2 actions with units, depending. So that's enough for them to do what they need to do. If they did roll a 12 or higher, they could max out their turn, essentially. On the Soviet side, they're starting with 10 units, and they get a 2d6 plus 4, which would be a max of 16. So kind of similar, keeping in mind that the infantry, the sappers, they're riding on top of the tanks. That limits what they can do anyway, because if you're a rider, you cannot fire, and if you're a tank that's carrying a rider, you cannot fire your main armament. So we're ready to begin. Okay, first thing we're going to do is, I didn't do this yet, each side gets 1 luck card. So I'm just going to take the top 2 off the deck here. I'll move the deck out of play. German, Soviet. Now you're supposed to keep them secret from your opponent, but since I'm my own opponent, we've got a pressing the attack for the Germans. After an attack or opportunity fire, immediately fire again at the same enemy with the same unit. Does not count against your unit's action limit. So we get a free second attack. So that's good, and we'll keep that for the Germans. Now on the Russian side, they get Gunner Ace. Used in any single attack by a tank or anti-tank gun, an automatic hit is scored and a +2 is added to the attack dice roll. So this will be good from an armor standpoint. Now as far as the shot itself goes, I will zoom in to get a little bit closer look at the action. This is the entirety of the board, which I felt was appropriate for the setup here. We have our 4 dice. I'm going to roll. We'll let the Soviets use white. Germans will use black. You roll 2d6 to determine initiative. So I'm going to roll all 4, and we'll see who wins. And the Germans win. They hit a 9, and the Soviets have a 6. So in our turn sequence, which I didn't really go over, but just really quick, the turn sequence goes, you move your turn marker. We're on turn 13. And as I said, we count down. Reinforcements, which is not applicable right now. Attach leaders and weapons. Everybody's already attached. We have a leader here and here on the German side, and our 1 leader here on the Soviet side. Smoke counters, there aren't any, so we don't have to worry about that. That will come up. Scenario rolls, there aren't any scenario-specific rolls for this particular scenario. Free rally and bog rolls. We don't have any of that to worry about yet. Nobody's been shaken up or stuck if you're looking at it from the bog. Bogging down if you're an armored fighting vehicle. The initiative roll, that's what we just did. Now the impulse roll is next. So this is pretty straightforward. I'm going to roll my 2d6 for the Germans who will get this number +2. And they get an 8 + 2 would be 10. So the Germans have 10 impulse points. The Soviets have 9 + 4 is 13. So 13 for the Soviets, 10 for the Germans. The Germans have initiative. Our next step is to play our turn. Okay, so let's talk about how things work here. So basically the Germans do have initiative, as we know. And you have impulse points, and we know the Germans have 10 of them, and the Soviets have 13. So you spend impulse points to do things, to do actions with your unit. So if you move, and that's all you do, you basically only get to do one move per turn. But if you do a fire action, you can do a move and fire, a fire and move. You can do fire and fire, so you can do 2 actions. Now the issue we're going to have at the start of this is that, now these are the bulk of our German forces here. We have these 2 guys up here. This one is technically hidden, and when it gets to attack, it gets to attack with an ambush modifier because it's currently hidden. And now that does have a range of 30. So at that point, you start to you have to figure out. Now, obviously, there aren't the Soviet units. You can't see them, but they're not 30 hexes away. They're less than that. So in theory, they're within range. The question is, does that gun have a line of sight? Now, to ascertain whether they have that line of sight, we got to talk about the terrain, right? So this is clear terrain, as you probably would guess. right? So what is this up here? This is brush. So what does brush do? Brush is what you would call degrading terrain. Each one will degrade line of sight, and when you hit the third one, it blocks line of sight. Okay, but so that would block line of sight to this unit all the way over to the far end. Let me adjust the shot a little bit. So in this shot, we can see everything except the Germans' mortar, and we can I'll slide the camera down to show you that here in a little bit. So here are our Soviet units right along this line right here. This is the western map edge of map number 5. So here we have our 88, our flak 36. It's got a range of 30. As I said, we're not 30 hexes out, but we don't have line of sight through here. This is blocked by these 3 right here. We have more brush along here. This right here is woods. Woods are blocks line of sight, so straight out blocks it. We want to wait until they come through this line of blocking terrain, because you also get a -1 firepower modifier when they come through blocking terrain. But basically what I was going to say is that if you don't have more impulse points than your opponent, you can simply pass. If you have more or the same, you have to basically burn one without doing an action. So in this case, the Germans have fewer. They only have 10. The Soviets have 13. So the Germans will pass. And the reason we'll pass is because I don't like this particular... This is really the only action I can do. Now, the mortar that's down at the bottom of the map, about another hex down from where my finger is right here, there is a bunch of woods there that blocks line of sight. So I think I mentioned, well, maybe I didn't mention this earlier, but that probably wasn't an ideal location for that particular unit. I did put it there because it's behind a stone wall, just as these are up here. They're behind, well, this guy is really behind the stone wall. This one's only behind a stone wall if you're facing this way. So having done that, we will go over to the Soviets, because you alternate. So the Germans don't spend an impulse point because they have fewer. So the Soviets can spend one to move. Now in theory, they could move and fire. And if we take a look here at our IS-2, you can see it has a range of 28. So the problem being, just as it was before, so this guy's hidden, this guy is behind a wall, and he's also blocked because of the 3 hexes of degrading line of sight, 3 hexes of brush. This one here is blocked probably by this woods right here. So, and then you have these down here, which are going to be blocked by various woods, etc. There's a whole bunch of woods down here. You can see the top of these woods here. All of this stuff here is what blocks the mortar from having a line of sight to our Soviet units. So we're simply going to move it. Now he has a movement factor of 5, and the movement for... So here's our terrain chart. I'm just going to lay that down. So here's our terrain chart. Tracked vehicle, because it's a tank. Open costs 1. So you can see a road would have it. Brush is 2, etc. 3, you have to roll for a bog roll. Your tank can get stuck, basically, is what that means. The X's mean they can't go through that terrain. So we're going to, this is open, so he's got a 5 for his movement factor. He's carrying the infantry, so he can go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. He is visible now to this unit right here, and he also has visibility to that unit, but he moved. And this unit is sitting in a trench, so it'll have a +2 defense as well. The range for its Panzerfaust is only 2, so they're way out of range, well out of range. The rifle squad can't really do anything to a tank anyway, but they are equipped with this Panzerfaust here. So they can see each other, but in this case, we're not going to do anything else. So instead of moved, fired, we'll just mark him used and say that he's done. We go back to the Germans. Now they have the same situation. This guy still can't really do anything, so we're going to pass again, and now they have 12, and they still have 10. So again, they don't have to spend a point, so they remain at 10. We go back to the Soviets. They're going to do the same thing. Now he also has a movement of 5 because they're all the same unit. They're all IS-2s. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, because this is brush. So he stops here. And again, we put a moved marker. So again, we go back to the Germans. They really can't do anything. This guy, in theory, now could fire at him because he can see him. But again, I'm not going to do that yet. So again, it's 11 to 10 now. They're going to pass. They don't need to spend. Now they go again. Just moving down the line here. So we have Chekhov here. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now on the road, it's half. So he could go here, or he can move up to here and stack with this guy. He doesn't have enough to move into this hex. So I think what we'll do is we'll just go down the road, 2 hexes, and then we'll come in this way. And we will mark him as used. Back to the Germans. Now it's 10, 10. We're at the same. So now the Germans will have to use a point unless they want to fire at our tank here. I really think we're going to hold off. And here's the reason why. So here's the unit card for our flak 36. See if I can get it. All right, so you can see it's an 88 flak. You see the boxes at the bottom that say range. So the to hit number is going to go up, right? I didn't count the hexes, but it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. So it'd be in that 11 to 15 range, which is a 7. And your firepower drops to a 14. So in theory, you can fire it out there, but I might wait until they're a little closer, because you can see as they get closer, the firepower and the to hit number improve. So in this case, since they don't know that that gun is there, we're just going to sit on it here and let them get a little closer, and then we're going to pop at them. That's the idea. And so that would actually end the turn. And from there, the turn sequence, after you do the play turn, you go to the melee phase. We don't have any melee. Then we go to remove markers, score victory points, and the end of turn, etc. So there are no victory points to be scored. Nobody's been destroyed. So we're going to remove our markers, and we're going to move on to turn 12, which is the second turn. So again, black will be the Germans. White will be the Soviets. The Germans get a 7, and the Soviets get a 9. So the Soviets are going to have initiative. Now we're rolling. We rolled a 6 here for them. They get 4. It's 2d6 plus 4, so they have 10. Now we do the Germans. They get 11 plus 2 is 13. So the Germans have more impulse points, but the Soviets have initiative. Soviets have initiative, so they're going to go first. Now, I didn't do the reinforcements and all that stuff because we don't have any yet. So basically you use 1 impulse point to do 1 action, right? So when I was talking about like moving and firing, you would move, mark it moved, then the other side gets to go. Then you could come back on a future impulse and have that unit that you moved fire. So it's not like you can move and fire in the same impulse, and it costs 2 impulses. So if you fire first and then move, you don't actually take the moving fire penalty because you're already in a position. So let's just say that this guy's just going to simply move up, and he's going to go 1, 2, 4, 5, and he'll stop there. Now I don't have to put a used marker because in theory he could fire. Well, theoretically he could, but he's carrying a passenger, so he really can't. So they can't fire any armament while transporting a passenger. What they can do is unload at the end of their move or at the beginning of their move. You can't move, drop off, and continue to move. It's got to be end or beginning or end of the movement for the vehicle. So we're going to unload here. So our sapper is going to take his satchel and get off. That's 1 of his movement points because you pay cost. You pay 1 to unload and 1 for the cost of terrain, which would be 2 because it's clear. And then we can move here to move them away from the tank. And the tank is I'm going to mark the tank used because he's not doing anything besides moving. And I'm going to put a moved on this sapper unit. Well, we know they have 10. So if that costs them 2, that would leave them with 8. So now we're going to have our rifle squad here attack this guy. So we're going to see our first attack. So we have a leader, and we see the firepower is a 4, and they have a range of 6, and they're only 1, 2, 3, 4 away, so they're in range. And you can see that they have a defense rating of 4 as well. So that would be a 0, right? 4 minus 4 is 0. So Sergeant Lindau, they add 1 to the die roll. So it stays in column 0, but they add 1 to the die roll. So here is our infantry combat table, and you can see here's the 0 column kind of right in the middle. So you roll 2 dice, and if you roll a 12 or higher, because you do have die roll modifiers, you can eliminate them on an 11 or 12 or better. Then a CS would be a casualty and a shaken. C is casualty, B is broken, S is shaken. So that's your kind of rundown there. Now you have die roll modifiers. They're not adjacent, it's not melee, they're not degraded, line of sight, and it's not intensive fire. So they don't have a machine gun or anything either. So there's no firepower modifiers. The firepower stays a 4. The die roll modifiers, moving fire, no. Attached leader, yes. So they get a +1. There's no height advantage or disadvantage. It's not an ambush. They're not shaken. It's not melee. Poor quality unit, no. Intensive fire, no. Leader, casualty roll, they don't have a leader. They do, but they're the attackers. So they're going to fire. All right, so let's bring our dice tower in here. And we're going to roll 2 dice. The map is sliding on me. I'm going to roll 2 dice, our 2 black dice for the Germans. Let's see what we get. We rolled an 8. So an 8 with the +1 becomes a 9. Let's move this out of here. So again, 9 is casualty. Pretty straightforward. A 10 would have been a shaken as well, or basically a gut check roll. But they take a casualty. So they're going to take a casualty, which just means we flip them to their reduced side. Right? Now they get a fired marker. And the Germans' activations go down by 1, so they go from 13 to 12. Or impulse points, rather. It's kind of similar to activations, but not quite. So we go back to the Soviets now, and we have this unit here, and they're going to move as well. So we're going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and they will stop there. They're not going to unload, so I'm just going to mark them used, or I'll just mark them moved, I guess. They can't fire, though, so I guess I should just mark them used, because they can't fire while they're loaded, and he's not unloading. Although maybe I should... yeah, let's do that. So he's going to stop here. And let's leave that at moved. So he gets off, which costs 1. He's in clear, which costs another 1, and he moves here, which costs another 1. And he's moved, and his range is only 2, so 1, 2, 3, he cannot fire at that German. So again, that's going to cost us 2, which leaves us with 6. Now we do have 3 more units we can move for the Soviets. Okay, so now we're going to spend our second fire action and do the same thing, and we're going to fire again at this guy. The range is only 2. We'll move our tower back in. We'll roll again. We have the same exact modifiers as before. And this time, the result is actually, well, I know it's not. It's an X because it's an 11. 10 plus 1 is 11. That eliminates that unit. So that unit has been eliminated. So we can take this marker off. Now they did not have a satchel. So 4 of the 5 units had a satchel. That one did not. So he is simply eliminated, and that will get points, casualty points. And a full squad gives you 2 casualty points. So they get 2 casualty points there. And now these guys are used. And that's another point off the Germans total, so they're at 11. We go back to the Soviets now. Let's have this guy fire his machine gun here. It's only a 2, but just to show maybe some terrain effects. 1, 2, 3, 4 is the range. So they're within range because the range is a 6. Once we're done, this guy's going to be used. So his firepower is a 2. Now they are in a trench, which gives a +2 to the defense. They are also, they're just in a trench. So they're going to get a +2 on their defense. Their defense is a 4. So that's a 6. So 2 minus 6 is -4. And you can see they're going to have to roll really well. They don't have a leader. They're going to have to roll really well to do anything. But they'll take a crack at it. So we're going to take our dice. Roll, and they rolled a 10, and a 10 is a good roll. And on the -4 table, oh wait, they're moving fire, so that 10 becomes a 9. Sorry, that 10 becomes a 9. So for the 9 column is S, which means they have to take a gut check. Now the gut check number is a 7. They do have a leader with them, so they get a +1 on their die roll. Okay, so they roll a 7, and a 7 meets the gut check number, so they are not, that unit is not shaken. Now, the leader, so because the squad did not fail its gut check, the leader does not have to take a gut check. So that's a no harm, no foul instance there. That does cost them another point, so they're down to 5 now. And now we're back to the Germans. Now the Germans, we have a rifle squad here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. They're in range, so they're going to take a shot at this guy because we do have line of sight. I don't think it nicks the corner of that, but it might. It might. But I'm going to say, for the sake of argument, because it's up 1, and we're just going to say that that they'll take a -1. So, or +1 rather. So the brush affords the defending unit who has a 4, their defense becomes a 5. So their defense is a 5. Our firepower is a 4. So we're looking in the -1. They do not have a leader. They do not have a leader. Oh, -1 to firepower. So it works out the same. So it's going to be a 4 -1 for the degraded line of sight becomes a 3. Their defense is a 4, so we're looking in the -1 column. So we're in the -1 column here, and we don't get a bonus for the leader. Well, let's put our tower out. Let's roll for the Germans. And it's looking like it's low, so it's a 5, and a 5 in the -1 column is no effect. And I know that was not in focus, and I'm sorry about that, but it had no effect anyway. So we're going to drop a fired marker on here. That leaves the Germans with 10. So the Germans have 10. The Soviets have 5 impulse points left. The Soviets will now move this guy here. So he's going to go 2, 3, 4. Now this is woods. And according to the terrain effect chart, to move into woods costs 2. And he doesn't have 2. Because first of all, he's on a vehicle. I forgot about that. So the vehicles can't move into the woods. Oh, tracked can, but it costs 3, and they would have to take a bog check. So they're going to stop here, and I'm going to mark them used because they can't fire because they're not unloading. So now we have to check to see if like this heavy machine gun can see them. And honestly, I think it nicks the woods, so I'm going to say no because woods are blocking. So I'm going to say no line of sight there. And we're going to move on. So the Germans now can use a second fire action on this guy. So why not? We know we're in the -1 column. It's basically a repeat of what we just had. We'll do the same exact thing. And this time we get a 7. And a 7 in the -1 is a shaken. So that's an S. I know it's out of focus. The camera doesn't want to cooperate today. There we go. -1, 7 shaken. So with shaken means we have to do a gut check. So the Soviets, and I don't know why I moved the tower out because we have another die roll here. The Soviets, just like the Germans, have a gut check number of 7. He rolls a 7, so he's good. And the Soviets have 4. So the Soviets will move. This guy here will go 1, 1.5, 2.5, 3.5. And we'll stop there. And again, I'm just going to mark them used because they can't really do anything else. They're down to 3. The Germans, they have more, so they'll just spend 1 to pass. They're going to pass the rest of the way. I'm not going to do anything else. We'll move the last Russian here. 1, 2, 2.5, 3.5, 4.5. They'll stop right there. And I'll mark them used, even though this is going to be the end of the turn. And that's the end of the turn. So again, now we would count up victory points, and we don't have any. The Soviets did lose a sapper, so they have 2 casualty points. Again, once they get to 5, they'll lose 1 of their impulse points. But that is the end of turn 12. We go to turn 11. And on turn 11, we don't... Oh, turn 11, we do have some reinforcements on the Soviet side. So the Soviets will get their first reinforcements here. And they're going to enter anywhere on the west edge of board 5. Enter loaded. So they're coming in on trucks. So let me clean up. I'm going to pause here. We'll clean up, come back, and do the rest. Okay, so turn 11. Our reinforcements have arrived for the Soviets over here. So 4 trucks. So here we have a truck, right? Pretty straightforward. No combat ability. You can see it's wheeled. It's got a movement factor of 8. It actually has facing, which I was not using, and I should. So let's turn it like that. These guys are riding. Do the same thing here. So let's roll for, so that was reinforcements. As far as our turn sequence goes, attach leaders and weapons. The leader that came in, there's 2. Sergeant Popov here and Sergeant Zurlev. They're attached to their units. They did get a couple of machine guns. They're in the same stack with the 2 leaders. So one is here, light machine guns. We don't have any smoke counters. Scenario rolls, no. Free rally, no. Initiative and impulse rolls. So we'll roll for initiative here. And we get a 4 for the Germans and a 6 for the Soviets. So the Soviets maintain the initiative. Let's see how many impulse points they get. 8 plus 4 is 12. So they get 12, and the Germans, they get 6. So 12 to 6 on the impulse points. So that's a little bit of an advantage for the Soviets. Now the impulse points, they kind of reflect the chaotic nature of warfare. I think it's a nice little twist. We do still have our fate, or luck cards rather, fate cards. I have fate in my head from playing Nations at War. But yeah, I still have this for the Germans where I can use after an attack, or opportunity fire, which we have not seen yet, but we may see it this turn. I get a second fire attack, like right away. And then the Russians have the gunner ace, where once their tank fires, they're going to get an automatic hit and a +2 DRM on their attack roll. All right, so the Russians get to go first. Let's start in the back here with our trucks, and we're going to move this guy. Trucks have a movement factor of 8, so that's pretty good. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And then they can move 6.5, 7.5. And they're going to stop here. And I'm just going to mark them used because we're not unloading yet, although we will be unloading soon. So that is 1, leaving the Soviets with 11. Now the Germans only have 6. So The question now becomes what to do here. So I think we still want to try and get rid of this guy right here. So we're going to fire again with Sergeant Lindau and his rifle squad out of their trench. We know he gives them a +1 DRM. They have their firepower of 4. They're within range. So let's take a crack at them. So it's 4 minus 4, which is 0 column, and the +1 DRM. There are no other modifiers. They haven't moved or anything, so we're just going to roll here and see what we get. And we got a 4, which in the 0 column, a 4 moves up to a 5, but you need a 6 just to get a shaken, so that's a nothing. I'm going to use my luck card. Why not? Pressing the attack. We're going to use it. And we're going to roll again. And this still counts as only 1 activation. It means they get to actually fire again. And we rolled a 3. So they're down to 5 activations. We drop a fired marker on there. We'll continue our turn here from the Soviet side. We'll move this truck up. And maybe we take advantage of our road here, because they can go 1, 2, 3, 3.5, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. All right. And then they would stop there. And mark them as used. That leaves the Russians with 10. So now the Germans with 5. Let's have him finish off his attempt to actually kill this unit by rolling again. And this time we get an 11, and that's going to be DRM'd up to a 12, and that's an elimination. So they're gone. That gives them now 4 casualty points. 1 for the first one. So they actually had 3 last turn, and I said there was only 2, but it was actually 3. So that leaves them, so they have 4 casualty points. So they're only 1 from triggering the -1 on their impulse points. And the satchel actually stays out there and can be picked up. So I'm just going to leave it there. I don't have enough satchel counters. The Soviets are supposed to have, I think, like a total of 5 or 6 in this scenario, and I only have 3. So I was going to like reuse them after they got used up, but nobody's gotten close enough yet to actually use them. So this guy is now used. And we'll just remove this for the moment. And I'm going to move my Russian trucks up again. So we're just going to go 1, 2, 3. Now this is going to cost them 2 because it's brush. So that would be 5. And then we're going to turn. Actually, no, we won't. So 6, 7, 8. And they'll stop right there. And we'll mark them as used as well. Now we go back to the Germans. And I'm wondering if it's now time for me to use my Flak 36 here. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So the range there is an 8. So if we look at our trusty card here, we'd be in the 6 to 10, which means our 2 hit numbers are 7, and our AP firepower is 15. Now we would be firing at the front arc, or the front armor. So I'm not sure I want to do that. Now, since they have fewer impulse points than the Russians, I think we're just going to pass right now. So we're just going to pass right now and go back to the Soviets. So they're going to move 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And we'll put it used on here. So they've used 4. And they started with 12, so they're at 8 now. And the Germans are at 4. Germans will pass again. So the Russians, in theory, do not know where our Martyr 2 is, which is our only armored unit. Now, the Germans are about to get some reinforcements, but those reinforcements are not Panzers, not until turn number 9. Next turn is turn 10. They're going to get some infantry reinforcements, and then on turn 9, the following turn they will get their panzers. Let's move this one. So they'll go 1, 2, 3, 4, and at this point, our mortar is going to do opportunity fire. Okay, so we're going to do an opportunity fire here. Our range is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So if we pull up our Martyr 2 card here, and our range is 5, so our 2-hit number will be a 6, and our AP firepower is 8. So we're going to see some vehicle combat, and we have a vehicle combat table right here. Adjacent target, no. Melee, no. Degraded line of sight, -1. So we do have that because this is a degrading terrain type. There is one of those, so we're going to have a -1 on our firepower. So the firepower, which is an 8, will become a 7. Their defense, it's within the front arc. So they are attacking the front armor, which is a 12, so that's unfortunate. So 7 minus 12 is a 5. So that is going to give us a result of -5. But first we have to worry about the 2-hit modifier. So we're supposed to put these acquiring markers on. So we have an acquiring A and an acquired A on there. Okay, so let's roll to see if we hit it first. So let me move my tower back in. So all this other stuff is going to depend on whether we even hit it. And to hit it, we need to roll higher than a 6. And we roll an 8, so we do hit it. All right, so we're rolling on the -5 here. And that isn't going to do anything. That's a 6. So a 6 is nothing. In that column, we needed a 10 to even cause a gut check. That's just a miss. So we put a fired marker on here. And that leaves the Germans now with 3 impulse points left. Let's unload this sapper. So this sapper is going to unload, so that's 2, and then 1 more is here. So that will count as his moved action. I don't think he can't fire at anybody, so I'm just going to put used on there because he's not going to be able to fire. He doesn't have line of sight on anyone. Nope, you know what? We'll just put moved. We'll follow the rules here. So that leaves the Russians now. That leaves the Russians with 7 impulse points, and we go back to the Germans. And they get moved as well. So we go back to the Germans, and we are going to use our Flak 36. We're going to take a shot at this tank right here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So it's 8. We know that this gun at 8 is 7 to hit number, 15 firepower. Now he's out in the open. There's no degrading terrain to worry about. It's an ambush because this is a hidden unit, so we're going to get a +1 on our die roll modifier for both the 2-hit number and the attack number. So our 2-hit number, realistically now, is an 8 or a 6 or higher rather, and they get a 7. So that would have been a hit regardless. Now it is the front armor. We know it's a 12, so we've got 16 firepower minus 12 armor is column 4, and we're going to get a +1. So this is actually a pretty good attack, to be honest, if you look here, because here's the +3, +4 column. So anything 5 or higher is going to be something. And if we can get an 8 or better with the DRM, if we roll a 7 or higher, we're going to blow this tank up. And we rolled an 11. So that is going to destroy that tank. So this tank is gone. Now we would have to check for crew survival. Forgot about that. So I'm going to put a wreck here. Okay, so we roll 1d6, and if we roll a 6 for the Russians, the crew survives. Crew does not survive, so that is going to be 2 more casualty points, 1 for the vehicle, 1 for the crew, and that means the Russians actually, their DRM on their impulse point roll becomes a 3 instead of a 4. So let me put a fired marker on our gun there, and they will get to fire again. They're down to, 3? Yeah, they're down to 3 impulse points now on the German side. The Russians have 7. So now that the Russians know that there is a gun here, this guy can take a shot at him, but he needs to move up closer first. So let's do that. So we're going to go 1, 2, 3. We'll stop here and put moved. Now he can fire on another impulse. He could also do opportunity fire, I think, but I'm just going to hold off and I'll just attack him the regular way right now. So it really doesn't matter one way or the other. Now he is going to fire, and I'm going to use that luck card as well to try and knock this gun out. But first they get to do their impulse, which will leave them with 2. They are at 6 right now. So we're going to do the same thing. So the range now is only 1, 2, 3, 4. So that's basically point blank range. Our 2 hit numbers is 6. Our firepower is a 16. So let's roll to see if we hit 6 or higher. Got a 6, so that works. Now we roll. We don't have any modifiers here, I don't think. Okay. And we got a 10, it looks like. And so what was it? It was 16 minus 12 is a 4. So we're in the 4 column, and I already know what this is. A 10 is another tank destroyed. So he is also a wreck now. And again, we roll for crew survival. And again, the crew does not survive. So now they're at 8 casualty points for the Russians. Germans have been rolling well. So we go back to the Russians now, and they only have a couple units that have not done anything yet. We can have we can't really do anything with these guys. So let's move this one. So if we go, here is 2, 3. I don't know if they can go through this hex because it's half woods. And they don't have enough movement points. So let's just say that they're going to stop there this turn. I'm going to put a used on there because he's done. We go back to the Germans. So this guy will now take another crack. This one is used now. Done. This guy's going to fire here. Now he's acquired at this point because he already shot at him once. So he's acquired. So this will be the second firing for this one. I'll just mark him used again. We have the same basic idea. The mortar 2, the range 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We do get degrading line of sight for the firepower to be a -1. So his firepower is going to go from, what did I say this was? 1, 2, 3, 4, yeah, 5. It's going to go down to a 7. So let's roll for the 2 hit, which is a 6 or higher. Oh, the 2 hit is going to get a +1. And that's a hit. So he does hit him again, but front armor, so it's 12. Firepower is 7. So we're looking in the -5 column again. And it's a 6. So again, that's nothing. So he's just used, and that is the end of that. I think the Germans are actually down to 1. If I'm correct, I think it's just 1 at this point. So let's send this guy this way. He's going to turn, and he's going to go 1, 2, 3, 4. And he's going to stop here. Going to stop here, and he's going to unload the sapper. 1, 2, 3. So they're both going to get moved. counting that as 2 activations. Now the Germans have 1 left. We can have our rifle squad, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, fire here. So they're going to fire at this guy. So the range is 5, so they're in range. Firepower is 4, their defense is also a 4. And I don't think there are any other modifiers. No other modifiers, so we're just going to roll here. We're on the 0 column. And it's a 4, and that's going to be nothing. So they get a fired marker, and that's actually, I'm just going to put used because they're done. They're out of impulse points. Now, turnabout being fair play, these guys are going to fire here. So they do have a range of 2, and they are 2 away. They're in a trench, so their defense gets a +2. So we have a firepower of 6, a defense of 4 plus 2 is 6. So we're on the 0 column. So we're going to roll here on the 0 column. And they get an 8, and an 8 on the 0 column is a broken. So they have to roll a gut check. And they pass the gut check. So they're done. And now the Germans are done, so they can do a fire here as well. So they've got a range of 6, firepower of 2. Their defense is a 6, so it's a -4, so unlikely to do anything, but worth a shot. They do get a DRM of -1 for moving fire because they moved. And they rolled a 3, so that's going to be nothing as well. So that's going to end that turn. And this might be all of it for this video. I think I'm going to break this into 2 parts because I would like to play at least most of this scenario to kind of give a good flavor of the game. So we're going to say this is it for this one. I do want to say thank you for watching. Please come back and watch the second part if you'd like to see how this turns out. There will be some assaults. You will get to see the Tigers in action because the Tigers will be arriving in 2 turns, which will be the next turn after this coming turn. So yeah, there's still a lot to do. The Germans have done pretty well for themselves so far, but I don't know that that's going to hold up. The Russians have a lot of firepower in this particular scenario. So that will do it. Thank you as always for watching. I do appreciate it. Please feel free to comment, ask questions, whatever. I will do my best to reply as soon as possible. But yeah, hope you enjoyed it. Please come back for part 2. That's going to do it for now. My name is Joe. This has been Hexed Encountered, and until next time, happy gaming.